You know I'm right here in the zone. Nick Durst and Joe Calabrese. And Joe, we have a very special guest here today.
Yes, very, very special guest. He is one of the most prominent, most important, most well-known lead studio guys right now in sports in general. Very, very happy we're having him on. For all intents and purposes, he may ultimately end up being our generation's Bob Costas in the end.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised there. He's done a lot of different things, and we'll get to that. But you mostly would probably know him from his great work with NBC Sports, and he is Liam McHugh. Liam, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. If I knew the introduction was going to be that good, I would have shaved or, taken a shower or something. But that was great. It was worth coming on just for that. Thank you. I need the ego boost.
Very welcome. Oh, it gets better too. Don't worry.
It'll get a lot better.
It'll get better.
So Liam, you grew up in Long Island, and we really want to know: are you a long-suffering Jets, Mets, and Knicks fan?
I am definitely Mets, Knicks. I'm not a Jets fan. My dad was Jets fan, and I watched that. I was a kid in the '80s, and I saw him like just angry, suffering, and I wanted no part of it at all. And then I looked up on the TV, and obviously, first of all, the Giants were very good, right? They were a dominant team. They had Parcells and they had Taylor. But I was this kid, much like Mike is now. I was this very pale, white blonde hair kid. And I looked at the screen and I said, who is that guy? Oh, Phil Simms. He looks like, that guy looks a little bit like me. I'm going to cheer for that team. And now, of course, I work with his son, Chris. So it's just bizarre. And I also think it's odd that, most people who have like the white blonde hair, as you get older, like me, it gets darker and you get older and, time ravages you. But the Simms family, that doesn't happen. Still perfect white blonde hair. They still look good. So no, not the Jets. I was a Giants fan. And the truth is, when I was a kid and I was a Mets fan, like a lot of kids in my neighborhood, because my dad was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And once the Dodgers moved, he felt crushed and eventually became a Mets fan. When I was a kid in the 80s, I felt bad for my friends who were Yankees fans because Mets were so good and they were exciting and they had superstars. And I lived on Long Island. I could go to their games at Shea Stadium so easily. And my friends, they had to go to the Bronx. And all we knew about the Yankees was that they were in chaos all the time, right? They were on the back page of the newspaper for all the wrong reasons. No one wanted to go to the Bronx to watch their games. And I remember saying to my dad, I'm like, wow, I really feel bad for my friends who are Yankees fans. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, don't ever feel bad for them. And I didn't know what he meant. And then for the rest of my life, I'm like, oh, now I understand. There's no reason to feel bad for them. They've admitted.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the Mets, but Chris Simms, I used to work at Turner Bleacher Report. Just want to get your thoughts on the fact that he always has his collar buttoned all the way up to his chin.
Part of me wants to say that he made a decision for an image and now he's stuck with it, right? Like, it's sort of like, God, they made the podcast with it unbuttoned and now there's a reference to it. And now there's no turning back. Because simply from a comfort level, there has to be days like right after Thanksgiving, right? Like you've eaten, for like 8 straight hours. You don't button anything up. You don't want to belt anything up. And now he's like, oh, I got to do this again, I guess. I don't know. He's sticking with it. It's his thing. And Chris does a great job, man. He works hard. I honestly, I don't know that there's a person I've met who loves football more than Chris Simms. He could talk about it 24 hours a day.
Yep, and of course, I'm sure soon he'll have his QB ranking list, and he just loves Patrick Mahomes, loves Aaron Rodgers, and loves Russell Wilson. Those are his guys. But as a Mets fan myself, I love Steve Cohen, and I think most Mets fans got to be really excited about that. So, what are your thoughts on the future here of the franchise? And you should not feel sorry for Yankee fans who are going to have to deal with the Mets reign here to come, like Joe.
No, I feel great about it. I feel it's a weird thing to be excited that this is a big market team that now can act like a big market team, right? It felt for so long that the Mets were, we're in New York, but, it felt like we were a mid-major at times, right? Like trying to get some guys and make them a little better than they are and try to, get some pitching. Well, let's get some guys around them and maybe we can make a run. No, it feels like the Mets can go for it now. They can act like a big market club. I love it. I love everything about it. I love his interaction with the fans right now. It's refreshing. It's something very different. I'm excited. I mean, and obviously, frankly, right now, there's not a lot to be excited about in the world. The news is always depressing, but there is the idea that by the summer, with the vaccines that are on the horizon, we get back to some sense of normalcy. And to me, the idea that if we can get back to that, and I can, with that, maybe go to a game, maybe enjoy the Mets right now, like that's the dream. Like I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to the idea that I don't have to suffer through a season. Maybe if there's hope at the beginning, I don't have to say, oh, don't give me hope. I don't want to get crushed. That's always the feeling of the Mets fan. So I don't know. I'm pretty pumped about the whole thing.
Yeah, Liam. So obviously the NHL, we're going to hope that they're back sometime soon, maybe by the start of January. That's what we're hearing. But we know that the NBA will be back December 22nd. Obviously, I'm a Yankees fan, Knicks a Mets fan, but we're also two huge Knicks fans. So we want to get your thoughts on when do you think they're going to finally turn the corner, if it's going to happen this year? I think there's some promise now, but for all the Knicks fans out there, do you have any hope like we do?
I'll say this, for years, and it's funny, right? Like it's been years upon years upon years of just being bad, and at times really unwatchably bad, right? And I don't think that's the case this year. I think there's reason to watch. There's reason to, check out some of these young guys and see how they grow as players. I mean, I don't think they're going to be very competitive this year, but I also like the idea that so far they haven't done anything in the trade market where you're like, oh my God, why would you do that? Let's have a plan. Let's continue with the young guys and let's grow. I would say this over the past, I've covered the NHL now for over a decade for NBC. And the Knicks being as bad as they've been has made my job easier because I don't pay attention to them as closely during the winter. I can just watch hockey. Like there's a distraction. You watch at the beginning and you're like, I can't take it anymore. Good. I probably pay attention to what I'm supposed to be paying attention to, and I can just watch hockey. I don't think that's the case this year. I'm interested at the very least. I'm interested in the Knicks. I'm interested in seeing these guys develop. I like the coaching hire. I like the moves in the front office, but no, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be all that competitive. But to me, you got to stick with a plan. And I'm hoping that these guys do. And a little luck wouldn't hurt either. I mean, we didn't get it with the lottery, obviously, a couple of years ago.
We haven't gotten it a lot.
We haven't gotten any luck.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
I think
a smidge of luck would be nice.
They had Porzingis. That was a great trade. They got nothing for him. But I think the Knicks are a lock for at least the number 3 pick. They wouldn't get the top 2, but number 3 pick, that's looking good. People always ask me growing up, why are you a Knicks fan? I say it's a birthright. My name's Nick. I have no other choice but to root for the team. But I think they're going to be atrocious. Maybe the hope could be that in 4 years they get LeBron's son, and then LeBron signs with the team.
Well, let me ask you, guys are young. So what's your, do you have early Knicks memories that are even positive?
Well, the Knicks were really good when we were, young, 99, 2000, going to the finals. So Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, those are our guys. And, of course, a lot of people give the guy a bad rep, but I love Carmelo Anthony. He actually came to New York with Amari Stoudemire and Rasheed Wallace. What a season that was. And then, of course, Linsanity. And from there, went all downhill.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the last great moment is the Larry Johnson 4-point play. 21 years ago.
Oh my God, that's a long time ago, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, I just miss those Garden moments,
yes.
Right? I miss the moments where the Garden was electric. The teams of the 90s were my teams, obviously a little bit earlier than you guys, but the Ewing, the Starks teams, and I'm such a huge Anthony Mason fan. And the way the Garden was just electric during those moments. And now, you look at the Garden and especially the lower bowl, which it's still full, obviously. I mean, they're still making money. Obviously, not during COVID, but when you could have fans there, they would sell out. But you looked at all the fans, and what are all the fans doing? Looking at their phone.
Yes.
Taking selfies.
That's MSG for you.
Yeah. And that's and it's sad. And I miss that. I miss that electricity. I think we're a ways away from it right now.
Yeah, I think the next time MSG will be electric is when Henrik Lundqvist and the Capitals come to town and shut out the Rangers, because I think that's going to be quite the moment.
That is going to be the moment. But and you know what? And the Rangers are going to be good. The Rangers' future is bright. So, like, that's at least something the Garden has to look forward to. But I'm looking forward to that Lundqvist moment as well.
Absolutely. So, Liam, you went to Herrick's High School. You played some sports there. I believe you played basketball and soccer. What was your basketball position? And then also, were you a big hockey fan growing up? Obviously, you're in Long Island in the midst of the Islanders dynasty. And when did your fandom for that really come into play?
Yeah, I grew up, I played a ton of basketball. I played soccer. I wanted to play soccer in college. I played for my soccer team, guys, a long time ago. It was a very, very good team, had a lot of talented players on. But I never played hockey growing up. I think, again, like a lot of kids I knew, our parents grew up in Brooklyn and Queens. And, when we said and the Islanders were good, this was like early and mid 80s. And they were the Kings, locally. I sat there and I said to my dad, I was like, oh, I really want to play hockey. And he looked at me, he's like, hockey's for rich kids. He's like, here's a ball. He's like, go to the park and, we'll see you in 7 hours. So I didn't get to play. I was a fan. Now, after that, as you know, the Islanders were interesting to say the least. I mean, they were, they had some moments here and there. They were competitive and they were good, but, more often than not, they were in the news for wrong reasons. So, and at the time, since I was such a basketball fan, I was, so into the Knicks. So while I followed hockey, I wasn't as passionate about it as a kid as I was about basketball and as I was about baseball. And I feel like, go ahead.
Do you think that John Spano actually deserves credit for keeping the Islanders on island?
Oh, that's a tough question. In a way, I guess, right? I mean, it's in a roundabout, strange way. You couldn't, if you told someone that story, and they had no context, there's no way they would believe you, right? Like, none at all. It's incredible. And then to come to where we are now, which is weird because we're in this time of complete uncertainty, but the Islanders' future looks pretty bright. And at the end of this, maybe next year when we have fans back, they'll have a new arena. Yep. And they'll open it up and we'll be in Belmont. And it's tied to Long Island, right? It feels right. Brooklyn never felt right for this team for many reasons. But I don't know. It's such a strange franchise, but it's quintessentially Long Island. It's one of those things where everyone's proud about, and you're proud of black eyes, even like the low moments. It's part of your history. So we'll see. I think I'm excited about the Islanders' future. I'm excited about the Rangers. I think they're going to be very good. But no, when I was a kid, I think because I never played hockey, and I think that's the case around a lot of the country. Like, while it's very popular in certain areas, it is a tough sell in certain places because if you grew up and you just never picked up a stick or you never skated, it feels like a different world.
Yeah. So I think in regard to I would say the Islanders not working in Brooklyn, I think a lot of that goes to how they built the Barclays Center. I believe at the very, very beginning, the plan was to make sure that the building was accommodated for hockey. And then somewhere in the process, the Islanders were like, all right, we're going to stay. We'll try to do something elsewhere. And then obviously that was kind of like a shotgun wedding type of moment where they had to figure out how to get the building ready for hockey on short notice. And obviously the seating of the arena wasn't really great for that either. So a lot of people I know used to love the old Nassau Coliseum, right? How many times did you go to the old Coliseum? Do you have any great memories there?
Yeah. I went there all the time as a kid. In fact, and now, after living all over the country, moving around and then being in the city for a while, I'm actually like 10 minutes away from the Coliseum where I live right now. And I had a ton of great memories. I remember seeing the Islanders there. It was, one of my first professional sports to see the Islanders play there. But I would also say this, even as a kid with no frame of reference, I hadn't been to the Garden yet. And I've seen really no professional sports. I walked into the Nassau Coliseum and I'm excited, but I still looked around as like a young kid and I'm like, this is it? Like, this isn't very nice, is it? Right? Like, I was kind of underwhelmed by, the environment, the ambience. But I will also say, it's funny, my kids are now at this age where bizarrely, because they don't watch it much. They don't really watch it all, but they somehow know professional wrestling because it's like everywhere in the culture. And they're, my boys are at that age where they wrestle each other constantly. I told them, I was like, I went to the Nassau Coliseum and I saw wrestling in person. I blew their minds. And I remember vividly seeing the Junkyard Dog wrestle at the Nassau Coliseum and George the Animal Steele. I'm extremely old, is what I'm trying to convey to the audience here.
Yeah, and we love that you brought up wrestling. We are huge wrestling guys.
We are huge
Nassau Coliseum.
That was the worst thing you could have done.
One of the homes for WWE. Not now, but they always go back there, and the Coliseum that's the only thing they're really hosting now. I guess that and the rodeo with
it's a sad state of affairs. I have to say, obviously selfishly, because I grew up going to it, because right now it's around the corner. I wish it was different, but I'm excited for Belmont. But man, I have some great memories there. So concerts there. It's part of Long Island. It's at Jones Beach, the Coliseum. You don't want to change at Jamaica. That's all about. That's Long Island, man.
So Liam, we want to kind of transition, kind of talk about more fun-loving things. So we wanted you to tell us a story. A couple of years ago, when you were in Dan Patrick's studio, right? There was the incident where all your photos were apparently plastered all over the wall, right? Mm-hmm. You seem like a really, really just very laid back, quiet, humble person. Somebody who's not going to really want to post it, his photo all over the wall. So tell me, what kind of planning went into that? Who was that? Was that really rib against Dan? Are you really a prankster when you guys are working in the studio like that? Let us know.
Well, first off, all right. So this took place at the Rio Olympics. Okay. And, you're basically in that studio like 8 hours a day, and you pass like ships in the night. Dan would finish up, I'd go in, and maybe we'd be on air together for like 30 seconds. These are long days. It's nonstop. You work, and then eventually it's over and you go home. But I didn't start that. I should tell you. Dan started this. He would start with pranks constantly. And I believe this started with, we'd have these massive shipping boxes that contain like wardrobe for everyone. So they were just sitting in hallways near our green rooms. And I was led down this hallway for some reason that I still don't remember. It was like, hey, I don't think your tie is going to work. Someone from wardrobe, like, you should come down here and change your tie. And I'm led into this room, and there's this massive box in there, and I'm looking around and I can't see it. And boom, Dan comes popping out of it and like scared me half to death. Like I fully jumped, yelled, and I knew he had got me. And it was like such a look on his face of satisfaction that he got me. Someone recorded it. So now it was like I was on a mission, and I probably should have been prepping for shows and guests and things like that. But now, no, that all went out the window. This was all about getting Dan back. So we have production assistants there and production managers who should be busy doing other things like prepping for the show and getting guests and making sure everything is ready for this 8-hour shift that you're going on. But no, instead they took my headshot and photocopied it like 150 times. And the minute Dan left, and a team, like an army of people that I didn't even know existed, I guess were like interns and certainly weren't helping me out personally before. I guess they probably had much more important things to do, but all of a sudden they were in there and they plastered his room. And no, it's not necessarily my style, but I was very much aware that this would be something that would bother Dan. So it was perfect. And then I had to make sure, like, I have to be there when he's there. So I came in, the picture, the look on his face. I have to say, one of the proudest moments of my career was getting Dan back in that way. And he got me back a few other times. He had something. Oh, you know what? We did a handoff a couple days later. We're on the air, and he's handed off to me, and he says some remark, and I said, thanks for the compliment. And he said, don't worry, Liam, you'll always be the soul of this network. And he crosses his leg, he puts his foot up, and my face is on the sole of his foot. He couldn't have been like, it was great. I have to say, I got to give him credit. I mean, and it was, at that point for me, it was over. Like, I had scored a knockdown before, but he had the knockout, and the fight was done. And you have to respect it. It was a good fight.
So I think the McHugh Mafia did a good job of getting to Dan Patrick. But speaking of mafias, you went to the University of Buffalo. What did you study there, and did you join Bill's Mafia in your time there at college?
I studied communication there. I did not join Bill's Mafia when I was there. I was still. It's weird. I mean, I had some friends that went to games, but for the most part, you're a poor college student. You stay at home. You watch the games on TV. But what I do remember specifically about the Bills at that time was, they were just on the heels of the 4 straight trips. So it was just ended. So it was the transition period of, just after Jim Kelly. So after the 4 straight losses in the Super Bowl. But during that time, while I was there, right near the end of my time there, was when Doug Flutie was there. And it was such a spectacle. It was such a huge thing that everyone in the city could get around because while they had Rob Johnson and paid a lot for Rob Johnson, Doug Flutie was a perfect quarterback for Buffalo, right? City that was told, a chip on its shoulder, right? You don't belong. People tell jokes behind your back. And I'm sure Flutie was the guy who was always too small, right? He wasn't going to make it. Flutie was the perfect quarterback. That place loved him. Flutie flakes were a thing. Everybody bought those. And obviously over the years through Notre Dame football, I had a great chance to work with Doug Flutie. And it's cool to talk to him about because, he's had such a magical career. He's a legend in Canada, college football legend. But he speaks so fondly, despite how it ended. He speaks so fondly of his time in Buffalo and the fans there. So I will say this. I mean, Buffalo, I'm excited for them right now. I'm happy for them. They deserve this. It has been a long time since they've won a playoff game. In fact, I think my freshman year in college was the last time they won a playoff game, the Buffalo Bills. Now there's a chance that they will win this division. They'll host a playoff game. So I'm pumped for them. If the Sabres could, elevate a little bit, that'd be nice, but maybe not this year.
Hey, the Buffalo Blue Jays looked pretty good this year as well. So
Buffalo Blue Jays, that's right. Yeah.
It's great spot there. So then you go to the University of Syracuse, get your master's degree there. You, like many broadcast journalists, went to that university. Are there any connections you made there or any other notable people that would be in the industry now that were there at the same time as you?
Yeah, I actually get to see, I don't know if you know Omar Ruiz on NFL Network. So he does a lot of West Coast games for them, and he's a reporter, and he goes to site. And this year, because of Football Night in America, and because of how good a lot of the teams out West have been, Seattle, and obviously when we started the season, there was a huge focus on the 49ers. And then for a while, Arizona with Kyler Murray, I get to see him quite a bit. So we cross paths. He's a great guy, really talented. And Raul Martinez is a colleague of mine, and he does NBC Sports in Boston. And another guy does a tremendous job. While I was there, undergrad, Anish Sharaf, who is a play-by-play guy for ESPN, was there. Actually, while I was there, a couple guys like Anish Sharaf and I believe Jason Horowitz, guys were on, remember the show Dream Job? Yeah. So it was weird to be there because these were guys, I was there as a grad student, and these were guys who have been studying broadcast journalism for so long, and they were so polished and they were so good, and they were younger than me, quite a bit younger than me. And to sit there and be like, oh God, in way over my head, these guys are already on TV, they're undergrads. I don't know, it's a great place. It set me up to, do the job I'm doing now. And it set realistic expectations. It basically told you got to go somewhere, small market, figure out your voice. And for me, I had to be bad for a while, and I was, and probably still am to some extent, but I really had to go somewhere and be terrible. And small market TV in Indiana was where I went, and Indiana, Oklahoma, unemployment, and then New York. So
it's funny you mentioned Anish because he's a friend of the show. He's going to be coming on with us in a few weeks. We got in contact with him through Adnan Virk from NHL Network, who's been on the show as well. But you get the master's degree and you head home. You go to Newsday. How'd you get that job? And obviously that's paper. What kind of things are you writing about? And then from there, how did you transition to that first television job in Indiana? And what was your process as far as sending your tape out and whatnot?
Yeah, so for my timeline, it was basically I went to Buffalo. Then I came back to Long Island and was looking for a job. And that's when I got a job at Newsday. So I've been writing in college for a little bit. And then I worked as basically a local high school newspaper reporter, which it was a great job at the time. Newsday Sports was fantastic. So many tremendous sports writers in it that have gone on to Sports Illustrated and ESPN, and really a bunch of national writers at that time were writing for Newsday. So it was a good place to learn. After that, I did some for ESPN, the magazine. But first off, I didn't see a huge future for myself in it. I was okay at it. I was not great at it. And I also saw, especially while I was at ESPN, the magazine, I saw a magazine that looked like a phone book at the start to shrink and shrink. And I'm like, oh, we're kind of running out of places for me to get my byline in here. And that was when I decided to go back to school. I consulted with some of the editors there. I thought it would be a good idea. And after that, after a year at Syracuse is when I, got that job at WTHI in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is right across the street from Indiana State University. And it was interesting. I did news, I did sports, I did everything. I basically did everything except the weather there. You produce, you write, you shoot, you edit. I hosted morning news. I hosted nightly news. I hosted high school sports shows. So it's great because it's nonstop. Everyone's in the same boat. You're not making any money, and you're just trying to grind away and learn as much as you can. So I did that. After that, I went to Oklahoma City, which I have to say is one of the best sports towns in the world. And for me, it was an incredible time to be there. It was kind of lightning in a bottle, where they, at that time, had the Pelicans because they were displaced, then lost them. They had the Thunder during the time I was there. Blake Griffin was a high school basketball player in Oklahoma and then a college basketball player at Oklahoma. Sam Bradford won the Heisman. And at Oklahoma State, I was 15 feet away from Mike Gundy when he did his "I'm a man, I'm 40" rant.
That was great.
Right there. I mean, and this was
in the building.
I was there. I was right there. I watched the game. I watched him walk into the press conference. He wasn't happy, which was weird because his team just won an incredible game against Texas Tech, where Michael Crabtree, of all people, who never dropped a pass in the end zone, and Oklahoma State beat them. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's going to be pumped up. He's going to be so excited when he comes in. And that's what we got. And I'd say it was all in a 2.5 year period when I was in Oklahoma. So it's a sports town that is intense. They love it. And it was, I don't know, it was a good time for me to get to learn a lot.
And obviously you're in Terre Haute, Indiana, and the big guy out of there is Steve Weatherford, who I guess was in college at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everybody wanted to know updates on him. And of course he goes on and wins the Super Bowl with the Giants. But in 2000,
I spoke to Steve a few times there. Yeah, because he was he went to Illinois, and Steve was like, he was a strange guy to begin with, in terms of all kickers are a little strange. But he was also he was a decathlete. He's like an incredible athlete. But no, he's a good guy. I actually got to talk to him a couple times.
The fittest guy in the NFL during his time playing, and he's a punter.
Yeah.
So then, in 2010, I think you're on a show which really was ahead of its time. If you took that show, The Daily Line, and put it now, it would be a huge hit. You had handicapper Rob DeAngelis, Reese Waters, who's a comedian, and Jen Sturger. And, it's you're talking a lot of satire of the comedian, but you're talking sports lines and whatnot as well. That show unfortunately is canceled, but you're retained by Versus at the time. And from there, you get the start with the NHL and haven't looked back since. How did that opportunity to host the pre and post game with the NHL come about?
It was timing actually bizarre. It worked out. I mean, no one wants to get canceled, and I certainly didn't. I worked pretty hard. I worked extremely hard on the Daily Line, and I have a lot of great memories that show. And those, the people I worked with were talented and devoted. But you're right. It was a show that I think people weren't ready for, and I think networks weren't necessarily ready for, because we kept switching format every week because people were like, don't do that, don't say that, don't talk about that, and people were pretty nervous. But that was the way it was at that point. I was still under contract with Versus, and this is the time when Comcast and NBC were merging. Comcast owned Versus. NBC was, I guess, tinkering with the idea of all sports. So I'm still under contract for a few more months after the show gets canceled. So I think the idea is, well, we're paying him for a few months. Let's make him do something, which I was more than happy to do. And they brought me on to do hockey. They wanted to start a post-game show for all the games that they had on a few nights a week called NHL Overtime. And for me, while I at this point was, again, like a casual fan of hockey, and I followed it and was interested in it, I was not someone who was following it to the degree that you would have to host a pre or post game show for the entire league. So at this point, I remember my wife and I, we moved to New York right when I got the show. We're there. We moved with my parents for a while. So I'm hosting the show on national TV. We're living in my parents' attic. We finally move out. We get a place in the city. We put the deposit down. The show gets canceled. And so now to pay my rent in this new apartment, I got to figure out a way to stay at NBC and do this hockey show. So I found myself, I crammed every single day and night as if there was a final the next day. And I just did that every single day just to get on the air and look at least somewhat competent. But I would also say that I had producers there who were great. They were helpful. And I had co-hosts like, Keith Jones. I've said this to everyone, like he's one of the most underrated people on TV. You can ask him any question at any time. He's never stumped. And more to the point, like he understands television, understands how it works, and he's willing to help you. So any question I had off the air, especially at the very beginning of this process, and that seems stupid, at least I could ask it to him off air. And he could say, don't ask that on air. That's not going to go well. That's probably not going to play. Or like, hey, we never looked at it that way. Let's try it. He was honest. He had a good feel for it all. So I'd say, I'm lucky because I was put in a position where people were willing to work with me, willing to let me learn a little bit and let me grow into the job. And, I love those guys, and I'm pretty happy. I'm so happy that I still get to work with them.
So obviously the NBC brand increased its scope of sports from that time period that you started through really the last decade. You've gotten the opportunity not only to work on the NHL Studio Show, right? You've gotten the opportunity to cover the Stanley Cup final. You got the opportunity, I believe, to cover the Super Bowl. Obviously, NBC, huge with the Olympics, the summer and the winter Olympics, right? You've gotten to do that. You've gotten to do the Tour de France, right? So you've gotten to do the Premier League, which has also become very, very big for NBC Sports the past 10 years or so. Through that time period, you've got to work a lot of different angles in sports. A lot of people don't necessarily get to do the scope of covering things that you do, right? So for our listeners, if you want to share just how each thing you covered was different than each other, right? Obviously, you said a little bit ago that you had to cram so much into your notes and into your preparation when you first started doing the NHL shows, right? So obviously you've done a lot of things. How have you prepared differently for each thing that you've gotten to have the opportunity to anchor and to do hosting for? And to your point about Keith Jones, what other athletes transitioned into the broadcast booth? What other personalities out there have you not done a show with that you would want to do a show with in the future?
Well, to your first point, each show is somewhat different. I like to think that, once we're on air, once the light's on, I'm more or less still the same person. But I would say at this point, for the most part, because I've done hockey so long and because I have a relationship with some of my coworkers, and because we do so many games, it's not the once a week like football, and it's not Sunday night football where it's an event, right? We are bringing you an event. Hockey, we get to that point in the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final, but because we do so many during the year, it's a bit more of a laid back vibe, and it's a lot more conversational. And while we have rundowns and we have stuff that we want to get throughout the show, if something interests me or it interests one of the analysts, spur of the moment, right in the middle of the show, we can go off script. We can just talk about that for 5 minutes, and then we get to break and we'll figure it out after. And I like that because I love that conversational format where if something sparks and it's interesting, go with it. Who cares? That's a little bit different with football. We can go off script a little bit, but we do have to get back things. There's so many highlights. There's so many different things we want to get into that show. And we need to, because they're important. And because we're bringing you news of the day on that Sunday. And we're getting you ready for this, what should be the biggest game every week. So I love it because it's an event and I'm live at football, but it's just different. Everything's a little bit more buttoned up, a little bit more concise. In terms of the amount of work I put into something and the exhaustion I felt when it was done, nothing measures up to the Tour de France. There's no way, because that is, you are in 21 different cities over 23 days, traveling with the tour. Some days you do 8-hour shift, you do a show, and then you get in a car and you drive for 6.5 hours. You get there in the middle of the night, and it was out of my comfort zone. So while we're driving, if someone else is driving, I'm just studying a basic Tour de France guide. I mean, half of it I'm studying for pronunciations, so and you know that you have a devout audience, right? It's not a ton of casual viewers. You have people that are very into this. So, you don't want to be someone who is talking down to them. You want to be someone who clearly hasn't done their homework, because it upsets them. This is the moment they've been waiting for all year. They really want to watch this. So in terms of exhaustion, it's that. In terms of what I feel like I enjoy the most, it's hard to compare anything to an Olympics, because I grew up, I love the Olympics. I grew up in a household that cherished and valued the Olympics. My dad was a runner in college. He was a track coach for a long time. We always watched the Olympics. So we watch from start to finish. We watch as many events as we can. So, it's a lot of prep, but we also have people that, one of the great things about NBC is because how much they put into the event and how much they put into the Olympics. They have researchers and producers that all they do every day of the week, all year long, is prepare for the next Olympics. So even though in 2012, I did the Stanley Cup final. A few days later, I left from that and went and did the Tour de France. And then I left for Paris. The next day I was in London on air for the Olympics. It was my first Olympics. And I'm like, what am I, I'm swimming. I don't even know I'm treading water. I don't know what I'm doing. And they said, don't worry. Like, we have people in place, they're ready. And they were right. Everything was taken care of. In terms of analysts who I would love to work with, that's a great question. Are you talking about people who are in sports now that
it could be a player turned broadcaster. So we'll use a guy like a Patrick Sharp, for example, right? He recently just made a transition. He's done a really, really good job, I think.
Yeah.
Doing studio work. But it could be a former player, former athlete. It could be a really well-known personality, a really well-known media host right now who you just haven't had the opportunity to cross paths with.
Yeah, I would say in terms of athletes who I watch, who I really like, I've actually found myself watching a lot of Get Up lately. It just kind of fits into my daily schedule. And certainly Ryan Clark's guy, I think does a fantastic job. Dominic Foxworth. I think there's a couple guys there who they know how to balance information with entertainment. It's not too much of either. And I like that, because there's an intelligence to it, but there's also like an understanding that we are here to entertain you. So you continue to watch us, but it's not just totally that, which you do see on some shows where it's just like guys yucking it up and you're like, I'm not even sure this is funny anymore. They're laughing. How about just to sprinkle in a little bit of information? So I think there's that. I think, for me, in terms of people who are on air and do my job, I think Reese Davis is someone I've been thinking about like the last few days, because it's a difficult year with college football. It's an unbelievably difficult year with college basketball, and to stay excited and to be able to be excited but informed, and to balance what's going on in the world with what's going on in your sport is really difficult. So he's someone like I've never really crossed paths with, but I really admire. I think he does an excellent job. And I would say this, in terms of just like, I think you do this for a long enough time and you wonder, like, am I still a fan of this? Like, or are these colleagues or these people? I'm a fan of the Dan Le Batard show. Like, I
wonder where he's going to end up now that he's losing.
I know. I find myself watching.
Maybe on Peacock.
It's funny. I find myself like, I'm curious because like I'm a fan, and I think he's such a smart man. He's able to have a serious conversation, and he is able to conduct a very serious and thorough interview. and then flip the switch for the next segment, and it's totally off the rails and ridiculous, and it's Stu Gotts driven, and he's able to handle that both ways. And for me, it's kind of cool because when I was young and I did work at ESPN magazine, one of the things I did was I was a fact checker, and you're just checking through stories, highlighting facts, looking them up, making sure they're accurate. And one of the stories I fact checked, I remember, was a feature by a young writer named Dan Lebitard, who I met, and I'm sure he has no recollection of this whatsoever, and I referred to as Mr. Lebitard, and he was very insulted because he's like, I'm not that old, and I know how he feels, because if anyone calls me that, it bothers me. But I don't know. I think he's an exceptional talent. So yeah, I'm now at the point where, like everyone else, I'm just sitting there wondering what's going to happen next.
I think there's two guys I'd love to see you work with. Number one, in the NHL, Sean Avery. I think you have to get the censor button really good to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Number two, in the NFL, two Long Island guys, you and Mike Francesa talking football. I mean, wouldn't that be funny?
I would. I've never met Francesa. I met Russo actually a couple of years ago. And what I loved about it was a very random meeting on the sideline of a Notre Dame game. I didn't even know he was there. I walked right past him, and
I think his son was visiting the school. He was
I think that, yeah. Oh yeah, and he was so excited. He was exactly what you would expect, right? He was talking a mile a minute. We didn't know each other. He's like, "Hey, you work with Chris Sims? That guy's a great guy." And his dad, like, "Yeah, you're doing a great job. I watch you all the time, kid." He's like, "All right, keep it going." So, and I don't know what hit me. All of a sudden, he had walked away. And
he had an all-time radio rant. Like when he came back on the next week, he was like, I went to Notre Dame. Not one person knew who I was. I mean, he was just flipping out. But I guess you knew he knew who you were.
I knew who he was. I mean, I didn't even. And the worst part was no one was around to, like, no one saw it or overheard it. So like, I'm like, did anyone catch that? It was like a tornado just came into the frame, hit me, and then went away. Just gone all of a sudden. But it was exactly what you would expect from him, and it was cool. And I found myself, it's funny, I grew up obviously working, I listened to him, and all of a sudden I liked him so much more after that interaction. Wow, that is who he is always.
All the time. So you mentioned you go to Notre Dame. We know you travel all over the world, really, but what are your favorite stadiums, and you've been to all the new ones, or arenas, and that your favorite to watch a game in?
I still love Notre Dame Stadium, but it's different. It's not like watching an SEC game. It's not as crazed. I love Lambeau Field. I love the history there. I got to go this year to the brand new stadium, the SoFi Stadium in LA, and it's hard to gauge, right? Because you have no one in the stands, and it's in some ways, like, it's depressing, but it's beautiful. It's $5 billion. It should be beautiful. It is beautiful. AT&T in Arlington is still extremely impressive. But, for me, I still love the Garden. I don't know that I'll find too many places that will feel special as going to the Garden. But then when I start looking around the world, I got to see one of the coolest things I got to see is when I was in Rio. I got to see their men's soccer team win gold. I had one day off during the entire time there. I looked ahead of the schedule. It was the second to last day of the Olympics because at that point, there aren't as many events. So I was given a day off, and in advance, my researcher and we were like, we have to get tickets. Let's find out a way to get tickets. And then obviously Brazil made it to the final. Neymar was in it. They played Germany, the team that embarrassed them in the World Cup. And they won that game in penalties. And to be in that old stadium, with grown men when they went to penalties, covering their eyes because they can't look. Right. And then when they won, seeing like moms and children hugging and like people who are in their 80s crying, that place will always stay with me. So that's one of the more magical places. But for me, the Garden, Lambeau, and from a working standpoint, also the new Soldier Field, I did an outdoor hockey game there. And I got to walk out and start the show from ice in the middle of Soldier Field. Snow is coming down. The Blackhawks and the Penguins are on the ice. And I have one of those moments where, you're thinking about what you're going to say and how quickly everything has to be done, transition. I just stopped and I'm like, how did I get here?
Right.
Like, how did this happen? Yeah, it really was one of those moments. So Chicago, for that reason, always be special to me.
So two things there. An Olympic talk there. How much easier did Michael Phelps make your job in the summer games, because it was a huge storyline? And number two, you mentioned the Winter Classic. What was your favorite outdoor game, and what was the most cold you ever been at one of those? I'm guessing it's the Citi Field one. Seemed like it was freezing, but
Citi Field was cold. It was windy, so it was a little bit deceptive. Citi Field was really cold. They had a couple of outdoor games at Yankee Stadium.
yes,
That were
Yes, I was at
freezing.
that was one.
That one was freezing. That was
How bad?
Yeah,
And
that
I was
one.
the bleachers for that game.
I was
that was
at
bad.
I was at Citizens Bank Ballpark. It was so cold, both my contacts popped out. I couldn't see anything, and the Rangers won, and I was getting pushed around, blind as a bat, by Flyers fans. But it wasn't that cold. That
No, I got my dad, who's now 83. So he's an older man, and I got him tickets to that Islanders game at Yankee Stadium, and we're in the first period, and Keith Jones looking at me, he's like, your dad's out there? I'm like, I know. I'm like, I feel awful now. I feel like I shouldn't have gotten these tickets. Please. That, and I did the Winter Classic in Ann Arbor at the Big House. Detroit and Toronto, over 100,000 people. We got a little bit of a blizzard-like condition, so we had the snow globe effect. So it was cold, it was windy, but my wife went to Michigan, and I called her, during a break, and I couldn't feel the phone in my hand. And she basically told me, she's like, stop complaining because it looks great. So I said, all right. And that was the end of that. But that, and yeah, I mean, listen, the Olympics, the best thing about the Olympics is, first, we have these events where, you have superheroes like Michael Phelps. You have guys, I remember the Winter Olympics where people I know, like TJ Oshie, but a lot of people did not know at the time, become overnight global stars. And that's kind of a cool thing. Then there's just the idea that you get to interview people who want to tell you their story. And their stories are usually great. They toil in anonymity. They work their whole lives for this particular moment. And that's the best part about the Olympics, because you deal with enough professional athletes, unless you're catching them on a good day and there aren't a lot of PR people around, you're getting a few comments and they're moving on, and they got other things to do with their day. The Olympics, they know this is the moment, they want to share it with you. And there's nothing more lovely than having, someone in there for an interview who actually wants to talk to you and wants to spread the word about what they've done.
So happy that you mentioned TJ Oshie, total American hero. Obviously, if you know his story, I think he's probably one of the most well-liked players in the entire game. So yeah, very happy you mentioned that. Your wife is a Michigan grad. That's quite a communications duo that you have in your house between the orange and the maize and blue, huh?
Oh, and so my wife, I actually met at Syracuse. She was a grad student there as well. So my wife was in this field. She was a TV news anchor, TV reporter, and she decided she wanted to do a real job, and she eventually became she was a special ed teacher in New York City for a while. My wife's operating at a whole different level. Like, she's way smarter, way more advanced. I'm out here talking about sports. She's trying to change lives. So, but the beautiful thing about it is, she understands the business, right? She understands the travel. She understands the commitment. And she also, what's great about this is that she knew me when I was at Syracuse, when I was in Terre Haute at Oklahoma. And so anytime that I complain about anything at this level, where people take care of me and help me out all the time and go out of their way to make things easier for me, she tells me basically to shut up and stop complaining, because I have no business doing that. Remember where I was, remember where we came from. We've got it good.
Yeah, she seems very, very inspirational type of person. Very, very lucky. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. But perfect segue for us to talk about this. Obviously, we haven't really hit on everything that's happening in the world right now regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and everything. From your perspective, you have sat down here the last half hour or so, and you've told us all your stories about traveling over the world, doing different events, going to different locations and stuff. Obviously, that has all changed over the course of the last 8 to 9 months for you. So just give us your perspective on, how safe did you feel traveling around? How safe did your wife feel and the rest of your family feel about you traveling around? Because obviously, there's going to be some reservations about not only going back to work in general, but obviously doing all the traveling that you need to do, regarding your work, right? So how did they feel about that? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, if I go back to we started the summer, we went back to work for hockey. We were in the studio, which was nice. I mean, and there was almost nobody there. It was safe, or at least it felt safe. And I think, at that point, it was kind of like, hey, this is good. You're at least doing something. It's fairly easy. You're around the same people all the time, so it's not that complicated. But once we got into travel, it was different, and especially with our schedule. I mean, Sunday Night Football was our entire month of October was all West Coast, so that's a lot of 6-hour flights, and it's nerve-wracking. Now, once I described to her, especially what it was like flying early on, which at that point there was barely on the airport, flights are spaced out. So we felt a little bit better about the whole thing. And then once I arrived, you realize there's almost no one in these hotels. You're in your room. Our protocol is different. It's like, it's strange now. I mean, we would have meetings. We would meet with the team, meet with players, meet with coaches, and we're all in a conference. Now I go to a place, I sit in my hotel room. I'm on a Zoom call with my colleagues who are also in the hotel, who I've not seen, in their individual rooms, and then a coach who is in an office on Zoom as well. So, I feel safe. It's just something we got over. It's something that became a new normal. But every once in a while, like anything else, it's normally got to refresh. You got to say like, hey, am I doing all the things that I should be doing? Am I doing it the correct way? And I think for us right now, we feel like we found the right balance. And I feel like it's different for me. The only thing that's different for me is week to week where I am. And there are times that you go and stadiums are empty. And there are times you go into Florida and there are people in these stadiums. And so to me, it's a little bit jarring sometimes. Oh, hello. My son's going to say hi. Hi.
Hey.
How are you, buddy?
Hey. Who's your favorite wrestler?
They want to know? Who's your favorite wrestler? Who is it? Kane?
Oh, Mayor Kane.
Nice. All right. Can I go play in a little bit? All right. See you, bud. Give me 5. All right. We're homeschooling.
Thank you for that local appearance.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, so to really, long story short, I think the idea is I feel pretty safe doing it. And I don't feel like anyone's put me in an uncomfortable situation. I think what's eerie is just being in a lot of these stadiums and seeing them empty, being in a lot of these hotels and no one's around. I went to Vegas. I did a game there. I walked the strip to go get a cup of coffee. Like it was just walking down the block in my neighborhood. There's nobody there, so it's bizarre, but it's what we're dealing with right now. And, I have no problem. They want to tighten up the restrictions, tighten them up. I want people to be safe, and I want to feel safe when I'm traveling.
Yeah, in Tampa Bay, people are there, and we thought you'd be firing off the cannons. Everybody on the pregame show picked the Buccaneers, and the Saints also destroyed them. So better luck to you guys coming up.
Listen, I mean, first off, when they said I could fire the cannon, I'm pretty much tied to picking the Bucs in that game. It's hard to fire the cannon and then say, and by the way, I'm picking the Saints. Now, everyone didn't have to follow me at that point. That game was a disaster. Yeah, didn't work out. So.
Liam, thank you for coming on and doing this. We're very, very happy that you and your family have remained safe through all this going on. We're very, very grateful that you and the rest of the NBC team and obviously all these other sports leagues have at least given us something the last couple of months to really help us get through here. Obviously, the holiday season is coming up. So, Nick and I, we wish you and the rest of your family very Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, whatever, whoever in your family celebrates what. We always give our guests on this show the last word. So if there's anything you want to promote, if there's anything you want to share with the fans, if you have a story, now would be the time to do so. But once again, we really thank you for coming on. We had a really, really great time. I enjoy watching you. I work So I work for NHL.com and I work for Major League Baseball, right? So I do a lot of stuff out of Secaucus. Nick has experience working Bleacher Report. He's worked at also in Secaucus too. He was doing a lot of stuff with his own recently. So, we have a lot of really good sports experience. I've watched hockey through the years. I've worked with all of the NHL.com guys, so I've gotten to see you on NBC. You're one of my favorites, and I really sincerely mean that. So the floor is yours. Like I said, if you have anything to share, you want to think, last words are all yours. Thanks again for coming on.
Well, listen, first off, thanks so much for having me. And I would say, if I want to say anything, it's just that, look at what you two guys are doing as my son creeps into the free. You can sit with me. Come on. There. I would say, I look at what you guys are doing and, you're grinding away. And I look at my career and I was in the small markets and I, worked that for years. And then, before I got an opportunity to do the show on Versus, I was unemployed for 13 months. No one returned my calls. No one was doing it. Nothing was popping. And I was thinking about not doing this anymore. So I would say anyone who loves this and wants to continue to do it, keep working, keep grinding. And then hopefully you get a little bit of luck, you get a break. And then, when someone gives you that break, don't let go. Demand that you stay, do whatever you have to do. Claw, scratch, work as hard as you can, cram for tests every night, and keep doing it. And as for otherwise than that, I would say, please stay safe. All right. And please follow the protocols. Believe in science. Okay. This is real. Let's all get through this. It feels like we're going to get vaccines at some point over the next few months. This is the time to stay safe and take it seriously, because hopefully by the summer we can get back to normal. Right, bud? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, guys.
Certainly
thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it. So
Thank
for
you.
our very special guest, Liam McHugh and his son, for Joe Calabrese, I am Nick Durst, and thank you for listening to You Know I'm Right.